This lecture is on conflict within Islam. So while Muhammad was able to maintain his religious community despite persecution, was able to take the city of Mecca and get things on a pretty firm footing, expanding territory that he was governing and developing his new religion further, he will, of course, eventually die. Right? He's going to eventually die. And this creates a crisis of leadership. Who will lead the Muslim community? Right? Who's going to lead that community? What made this complex, in particular, was that he had no clear successor. He didn't say to someone, "You're going to be my successor." He does give a speech in which he implies that his successor will be someone named Ali, but it's not 100% clear. It's a little bit ambiguous. So he doesn't make it clear who should follow after him. Right? He doesn't make it clear who should follow after him. So that's a problem. And he also has no living son. This is still a fairly patriarchal society. So if he had a living son, it would just kind of naturally go to his living son. So what happens is there are two main contenders for who could be the next caliph. One is a man named Abu Bakr, who is Muhammad's father-in-law. Right? He's Muhammad's father-in-law. So that is a logical person. It also should be pointed out he was one of the very first to convert to Islam. So he had been there since the beginning. Right? So if Muhammad's not going to be your leader, it kind of makes sense to have someone who's close to him, like his father-in-law, and who's been there since the beginning. In addition, there is someone named Ali, who I mentioned earlier. Muhammad had given a speech in which he implied that maybe Ali should be the caliph, but it's not clear, his successor. And Ali was his son-in-law. Right? So that kind of makes sense too, because he's also very close to Muhammad, and your son-in-law is kind of like your son, and that would mean that his children, which he had some, one named Hussein, who we'll talk about later, his children would be the grandchildren of Muhammad, and that has a kind of logic to it. What will end up happening is Abu Bakr is going to become caliph. Right? It's a very long story about why this happens, but I just want to stress in this, the community decides that Abu Bakr will become the next caliph. Now, you may say, what is a caliph? Well, a caliph means simply successor. Successor to who? Successor to Muhammad. Right? So caliph means successor. Successor to who? To Muhammad. It's important to know that word because we'll be doing it a lot. So what's key here is for some Muslims, Abu Bakr is going to be considered an ideal caliph. For other Muslims, he's going to be considered a usurper, someone who took away the position of caliph from its rightful heir, Ali. So Muslims are divided over this. Right? Some people see Abu Bakr as a good caliph, an ideal person. Others say, no, he's an usurper who took away Ali's position. As an aside, this is Abu Bakr's name in Arabic calligraphy. Now, the thing about Abu Bakr that's very important, so Muhammad dies in 632, and a lot of the Arab tribes had taken oaths to follow Muhammad. And they said, okay, Muhammad's dead, our oaths are done. And Abu Bakr says, no, you became Muslims. And I'm the leader of Muslims. So we're not done. And this leads to a war. And the key thing is, you've got these tribes who say, we're no longer bound to follow you, Abu Bakr, you're not Muhammad. And you've got Abu Bakr saying, no, you're going to follow me. I'm the leader of Muslims. They're going to fight, and Abu Bakr will win. And this will hold the Islamic State together. Right? If he would have lost, it could have split. But he holds it together. Now, to continue, Abu Bakr, he's caliph for only a couple years. He does his job, and then he dies. And he dies of natural causes. And he's going to be succeeded by two more caliphs. I don't want to go into deep detail about these two caliphs, except to note that both are assassinated for political reasons primarily. I want to stress this early struggle is not so much about doctrine. I don't want to say that's not a part of it at all, but it's mostly about power politics. And then Ali, Muhammad's son-in-law, will then become caliph. So he'll be number 4 caliph, and that's his name in Arabic calligraphy. This will lead to a civil war, and Ali will be assassinated. And I want to stress, this is a major, for all Muslims, no matter what side you're on, this is really sad because, this is the son-in-law of Muhammad. And then his son, Muhammad's grandson, is killed in battle during this civil war. Now, I want to stress, this struggle was primarily over succession, so it was mostly political, but there was an issue of doctrine here, whether the successor had to be a member of Muhammad's family or not. That was one of the major claims for why Ali should be the successor, because he's, his son-in-law. He's much closer than, in a sense, than the father-in-law. But like I said, it's not principally over doctrine. However, that's going to change. And you will have the gradual development of the two major forms of Islam, Sunni and Shia. So the Sunni are the majority Muslim group. They make up about 90% of all Muslims. And the Sunni believe that the caliph should be chosen by the community, should be from Muhammad's tribe, but doesn't need to be from Muhammad's family, and that therefore Abu Bakr was the legitimate caliph. The Shia are a minority. And if we look at this map, you can see these countries here are primarily Sunni. Shia are concentrated here. In Iraq and Yemen, you have a mix, and notice those are two areas where there's more conflict, as there's kind of a struggle between them. But the Shia are the minority. They believe Ali was the legitimate caliph because he's like Muhammad's kin. And so they disagree over who should have been caliph and how that position should be chosen. And what's going to happen is they separate over this issue. And over time, they do develop more doctrinal divisions, to the extent that a large number of Sunni Muslims don't believe that Shia Muslims are really Muslims. But the key thing I want to stress, this primarily started out over this struggle over who would be the caliph, who would be the successor of Muhammad. They had slightly different understandings of what was required of a successor, and they disagreed over the succession. And this split, right, leads to a civil war, the killing of Ali, Muhammad's son-in-law, the killing of his grandson. And this hardens the divisions between these different groups, and they eventually develop different doctrinal understandings of how Islam works. We don't need to go into detail about those because there are a lot and they're very complex. The only one I really want you to understand is this issue of who should have been the caliph and how caliph should be decided, right? Is it by the community simply, or is the Sunni belief, or does the caliph have to be from Muhammad's family? But here's the thing I want to stress. If we just stop there and be like, okay, Muslims fought each other. No. The tribes of Arabia will eventually be unified under Islam, and you will have eventual stabilization under the caliphs. There'll be some conflict, but it doesn't continue like what we saw here. Eventually, there will be enough stability, and we've talked about this before, that Islam can expand out. Right? Just like we talked about Rome. When the Romans figured out how to maintain a stable state, that made it very easy for them to go out and expand. We're going to have something happen here with Islam, but we'll talk about that in another lecture.